When Meghan Markle agreed to appear on live television again, no one expected a meltdown. But what began as a warm reunion between a royal and one of America's most trusted journalists quickly spiraled into something much darker. The smiles faded, the questions got personal, and by the end, there were raised voices, broken trust, and an empty chair on set. Viewers thought they were tuning into a feel-good morning segment. What they got instead was an emotional showdown that left even Savannah Guthrie visibly shaken. But what pushed Meghan over the edge? And why did this interview never make it to reruns? The Today Show studio was buzzing, cameras were calibrated, coffee cups steamed behind the scenes, and the studio audience murmured in anticipation. At precisely 8:03 a.m., Savannah Guthrie, ever polished in her navy blue suit, turned toward the camera with her signature calm. She's been called a princess, a pioneer, and at times a controversy magnet. This morning, Meghan Markle joins us to talk life after royalty, motherhood, and everything in between. Meghan, welcome. Meghan appeared on set in a cream-colored power suit, her hair sleeked into a tight bun, a thin smile curving her lips. As she waved to the audience, applause erupted. She settled into the seat opposite Savannah, crossing one leg over the other, the air between them cordial, for now. Thanks for having me, Savannah. It's been a while since I've done something like this. Savannah returned the smile. We're thrilled you're here, so let's start light. How's California life treating you? Meghan chuckled softly. It's sunny, quiet, free. The audience laughed lightly, though the word free seemed to hang in the air with heavier meaning. They continued like this for several minutes, talking about the weather, Archie and Lilibet's latest drawings, her upcoming children's book. But Savannah was a seasoned journalist. She knew when to pivot. Meghan, a lot has been said about your departure from the royal family. I know you've addressed it in interviews before, but for our audience, can you share what ultimately made you and Prince Harry decide to step away? Meghan's smile faltered, just a little. Her hand reached for the water glass, though she didn't drink. I think we've said everything that needs to be said about that chapter, she replied coolly. Repeatedly, I might add. Savannah held the pause, her tone still gentle. But many feel there are still unanswered questions. Was it safety, public pressure, family dynamics? Meghan's eyes narrowed just enough to register. Is this the crown, Savannah, or an interview about my current life? The room tensed. Savannah didn't flinch. It's just that millions watched you marry into the royal family and then watched you leave. That kind of visibility is one thing, Meghan cut in, but interrogation dressed as curiosity is another. There was an audible shift in the studio. Meghan uncrossed her legs, leaned forward slightly, her tone sharper now. I agreed to come here to talk about now. If your producers wanted a history lesson, they could have just streamed Oprah. Savannah blinked, thrown off for the first time, but she recovered. Understood. Let's move forward then. There was a brief silence before Savannah tried to steer the ship back on course. Let's talk about you and Prince Harry. How is your relationship today? After everything? Meghan let out a low chuckle, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. You know, it's fascinating how people think they're entitled to updates on a marriage they don't belong to. Would you like me to ask how your husband's last dental checkup went? Or perhaps whether you argued over dinner last night? Savannah's face froze in a practiced anchor expression, calm, even slightly amused. I think viewers are simply inspired by your love story. It's only natural they'd be curious. No, Meghan snapped. What's natural is privacy. What's unnatural is the way you people twist curiosity into clickbait. The audience had fallen nearly silent. Savannah tried again, her tone cooler this time. I assure you we're not here to twist anything. But you have lived a very public life, Meghan. Surely you expected questions. Meghan leaned back, folded her arms. Surely you expected answers. You just didn't expect them to be mine. There it was, the turning point. The glimmer of defiance no amount of makeup or lighting could soften. Before Savannah could pivot again, Meghan added one final barb. Maybe instead of fishing for drama, you should ask yourself why women like me don't trust interviews like this in the first place. And with that, the energy in the room shifted from tension to discomfort. It was no longer an awkward segment. It was a confrontation in real time. Savannah took a breath, her lips tight. Let's take a quick break. The camera cut to commercial. But behind the scenes, the real drama was just beginning. Maybe even an apology disguised as a laugh. But when the camera faded back in, Meghan Markle was still in her seat, legs crossed tightly, expression unreadable. Savannah Guthrie returned with her practiced grace, though something in her eyes suggested she knew the temperature had dropped several degrees. Welcome back. We're here with Meghan Markle, who's been speaking candidly about life after royal duties. Meghan, let's shift gears a bit, shall we? Meghan didn't smile. She gave a short nod, not quite approval, more like permission. Savannah continued carefully, her voice smooth. There's been quite a lot of attention on lifestyle choices. Some recent reports say you've made headlines for your spending habits, renovations, security, travel, even some designer collections. Are we reading tabloids now? Meghan snapped, her voice like glass shattering across the studio. Or is this still the Today Show? A soft murmur passed through the audience. Meghan leaned forward, her jaw clenched, eyes drilling into Savannah's. Because if we're going to play this game, I'd love to discuss Jeff Bezos's yacht or Elon Musk's satellites. But I guess it's easier to critique a woman's wardrobe than a billionaire's war chest. Savannah blinked, her composure unshaken but strained. It's not an accusation, Meghan. Oh, please, let's not insult each other's intelligence, Meghan said, voice rising. You're using soft-voice journalism to mask sharp-edged judgment, and I'm tired of it. Savannah sat up straight with him. I'm simply giving you the chance to address things publicly discussed. No, you're giving me the chance to defend myself again, Meghan interrupted. As if living under a microscope wasn't enough. As if everything I wear, say, or breathe isn't already dissected online by people who've never walked a day in my shoes. The tension was now a physical thing. Even the cameramen had stopped shifting. The audience was frozen. No coughs, no shuffling bags. Just eyes wide and lips pressed shut. Meghan, Savannah said slowly, her voice now wrapped in steel. With all due respect, I believe our viewers want clarity, not confrontation. Then maybe ask questions that don't sound like traps, Meghan retorted, eyes burning. Or better yet, ask men these same questions and see how quickly they walk out. Savannah tilted her head slightly, her calm now deliberate, the kind used to calm a room on fire. I've interviewed everyone from heads of state to grieving parents. I know the difference between a tough question and a personal attack. I assure you this is the former. Well, I assure you, Meghan snapped, that I don't need a national platform to be scolded by someone pretending to smile. Gasps, audible gasps. Someone in the second row even whispered, "Oh my God," before quickly covering their mouth. Savannah's eyes flicked toward the control room for the briefest moment. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and dropped the anchor voice. Meghan, if you feel this space is no longer respectful, you are free to end the interview. A long pause. Meghan stared at her for several beats. Then she stood. The audience didn't clap. No music played, just the sound of her heels on the studio floor as she grabbed her blazer and turned toward the exit. I came here thinking this would be about growth, Meghan said over her shoulder. But I see it's still about guilt. Savannah remained seated, back perfectly straight, her eyes following Meghan silently until the door swung shut. Then, with the professionalism that made her a household name, Savannah turned back to the camera. We'll be right back after this. Fade to black. Backstage silence was louder than any studio applause. As Meghan Markle pushed through the side door of the studio with her assistant trailing behind, her microphone still clipped, the producers inside the control room scrambled to mute her audio feed. The broadcast had returned to a placeholder graphic. We'll be right back. But behind the scenes, chaos brewed. Meanwhile, Savannah Guthrie remained seated, calm on the surface, but her fingers twitched ever so slightly under the table. Her earpiece crackled with producers whispering a dozen questions at once. Do we go to standby? Is she coming back? Should we address this live? She ignored them. She needed a second. The audience hadn't been dismissed. They sat motionless in their seats, unsure if this was over or just a dramatic pause. After all, they had come for Meghan Markle, not a morning brawl. Then suddenly, the side door creaked open again. Meghan had returned, but something had changed. Her blazer was now off, revealing a sleeveless silk top. Her expression was unfiltered, not composed, not professional, just raw. She didn't sit. "You know what?" she said, voice carrying clearly across the room, though no mic picked it up. "Let's finish this." Savannah blinked. "Meghan, we were going to wrap the segment." "No," Meghan snapped. "You were going to wrap me. There's a difference." Her assistant stood frozen by the doorway, clearly unsure whether to intervene or not. Security stepped slightly closer from the corners of the set, alert but not acting. Meghan walked slowly back to the desk, hands on the edge. "Let's talk about what you really wanted, Savannah. You didn't invite me here to talk about my work. You wanted a spectacle." Savannah shook her head. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Meghan said. "You opened with flowers and praise, then shifted into divorce rumors, money stories, and royal politics within 5 minutes. You wanted fireworks." "I asked questions that were already public," Savannah countered. "That's what journalism is." "No, that's what opportunism is," Meghan shot back. "And it's why women like me don't sit down for interviews anymore unless we bring our own cameras." Savannah's tone cooled. "You agreed to this interview, Meghan. You approved the outline." "I approved a conversation," she said, now raising her voice. "Not a cross-examination." The audience was stunned. Meghan's voice, usually calm and polished, now rang with something harsher. Not just anger, but a deep wound resurfacing. "Do you even realize," she continued, "what it feels like to smile through slander? To be called a liar, a gold digger, a social climber, every day, and then be expected to come here and sip coffee like it never happened?" Savannah said nothing. "You sat there smiling while trying to unearth scandal from my life. But let me ask you this. Why don't you ever dig that deep into the men on your show? Or the royal institution itself?" That landed hard. Savannah adjusted her posture. "This isn't about gender. It's about public accountability." "No, it's about perceived accessibility." I smiled. I acted warm. "So you thought that gave you access to everything?" Savannah, clearly at her limit, now spoke softly but firmly. "Meghan, I don't think this is productive anymore." "Oh, now you're setting boundaries?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "Funny how that works." She stepped back from the table. "You want a soundbite? Fine. Here's one. I don't owe anyone my trauma in exchange for airtime. Not you, not the public, not even the crown I left behind." And then she did what few had done on the Today Show stage. She unclipped her microphone herself, dropped it onto the glass table with a muted clink, and walked out. This time for good. Savannah didn't move, didn't blink. She looked straight at the audience, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that concludes our segment." There was no applause, only the hum of confusion, tension, and the sudden realization that this episode wouldn't just trend, it would explode. The credits didn't roll. There was no usual upbeat music to signal the end of a segment. No perky co-host to cut in with weather updates or recipes. Just Savannah Guthrie, sitting alone under the studio lights, staring at the spot where Meghan Markle had just dropped her microphone. The producers in the control room were frozen. Even the director, known for his "nothing shakes me" demeanor, was speechless. Savannah finally exhaled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her voice, when it came, was calm but emotionally worn. "We'll be right back after this." The broadcast cut to commercial, but the internet didn't. Within 5 minutes, clips of Meghan's "I don't owe anyone my trauma" barked line had flooded X, formerly Twitter, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. Multiple hashtags began trending simultaneously. Hashtag Meghan v. Savannah, hat mic drop moment, hat Tadekini show meltdown, / royal reckoning. News outlets scrambled to respond. Entertainment Tonight ran a banner. Meghan Markle explodes on live TV. Meanwhile, The Guardian offered a softer take. Meghan Markle confronts media narrative in fiery interview. Inside the studio, staff stood in quiet clusters. The audience was slowly ushered out, many whispering things like, Was that real? And she looked furious, but kind of powerful. Savannah returned to her dressing room, her heels clicking with an uncharacteristically slow rhythm. Once inside, she shut the door gently, sat down, and stared at her reflection. She was a veteran. She'd interviewed presidents, survivors, and scandal-ridden CEOs. But this had been different, not because of the subject, but because of how it felt. Personal, charged, raw. A knock interrupted her thoughts. It was a young producer, face pale. "Savannah," she just posted. He handed her a phone. On the screen was Meghan's latest Instagram post. "Peace isn't passive. Sometimes it requires walking away from the table. Today, I chose peace." Meghan Savannah read it twice, then 3 times. "Smart move," she muttered, not bitter, not angry, just tired. Back on air, Hoda Kotb had filled the space with weather updates, clearly improvising while the network decided how to spin the storm they had just aired live. By noon, the clip had hit 8 million views on TikTok alone. By evening, SNL writers were reportedly crafting a sketch about it. And by nightfall, talk shows, royal commentators, and social justice advocates had all taken sides. Some praised Meghan as a woman defending her boundaries in a toxic media landscape. Others called her ungrateful, dramatic, even manipulative. But no one could deny one thing. The conversation had changed. For Savannah, it was a bruise to her reputation, but also a wake-up call. Her next monologue would address the fallout, likely with grace. She always knew how to land on her feet. And for Meghan, she'd become the conversation again. But this time not as a duchess, not as a victim, and not even as a celebrity. As a boundary. A boundary the world was still learning how to handle. And just like that, a morning interview turned into a media earthquake. But who was right? Meghan for standing her ground? Or Savannah for asking the hard questions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear what you think. And if you want more intense, real-time drama like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss our next story. Because when royalty and reality collide, the crown always cracks under pressure.